I feel like sometimes when you put a requirement on things like that, though, kids try to jump through too many holes to say they did something, and they lose sight of the good endorphins that they get from actually doing it. That's really what I found from doing these is the kids aren't showing up for me per se, they're showing up for themselves, and once you get them to one event, they're coming back all the time.
I'm Nikki Herda, and this is Bright, Stories of Hope and Innovation in Michigan Classrooms, a podcast where we celebrate our state's educators and explore the future of learning. There's a lot of pressure resting on the shoulders of our students and educators today. Though requirements are perhaps a necessary component of fairness and accountability in learning, they can sometimes cause us to lose sight of the bigger picture. It can be powerful for students to have opportunities to learn where there are no grades attached, that allow them to connect to the intrinsic value of a learning experience, whether it be for the love of a good story or for the joy of making a positive impact in their home community. In today's episode, I chat with Erin Carlson, an English teacher at Sandusky Jr and Senior High School, who was honored as a 2020-21 Regional Teacher of the Year, representing her geographic area in Michigan's thumb. Erin shares her journey in creating requirement-free learning opportunities for her students in Sandusky. And can you tell me a little bit about what drew you to education in the first place and how that journey has led you to where you are today?
Since I was a younger student, I always thought education was in my future. I used to play school all the time when I was a kid, and my mom had a daycare when we were growing up, so I was always around a lot of younger kids, and it was just something that I really enjoyed, working with other kids, and so it kind of naturally fell into place when I went to college and decided that's what I wanted to do, and it led me back to my home area. So this is my 16th year teaching. I finished the 16th year, and I've enjoyed it ever since. So.
One of the things that you mentioned when we were talking before is that you have a passion for community service opportunities and learning beyond the classroom walls. And I was just wondering if you could tell me a little bit more about what this means and why it's so important for students.
Whenever I think about my favorite experiences as a student and what I remember about my teachers and the grades back from when I was in school, I always remember the little extra things that some of my teachers did for me, and those are the memories that really stand out. So I feel like I've had this opportunity to bring in some different opportunities for my own students, and that just brings so much more joy to me as a teacher because I can connect with them beyond the subject matter. So some things that, I guess the most powerful thing that I started here at Sandusky that has kind of led to this community service overhaul, we'll call it, I am the NHS advisor, and so NHS is targeted more with the GPA. Students have to have a certain GPA, a 3.5. But I really don't like that you have to be stuck to a certain grade point to do things in the community. So I found a way to advise a different organization too, but pull in all of those community service opportunities for any kid. And so I worked with our Kiwanis Club here in Sandusky, and we started what's called a Key Club. That is a national organization as well. And I like being the advisor of both of those because it does give me that opportunity to present those activities to any kid. It doesn't matter what your GPA is. It doesn't matter if you're a junior or senior, what NHS is limited to. This is open to 7th through 12th. One of the most, I guess we'll say, well-known events that we do 5 times a year here in Sandusky is our Flags of Remembrance project. And that project, it's been in place probably 5 or 6 years now. And we have allowed anyone in the community to buy one flag with a plaque of a veteran that they would like to commemorate. And so 5 times a year we put up, it's now over 500 flags, full-size flags, on our courthouse lawn with those plaques next to each of the flags. What I love most about those events is that you have such a variety of students that show up at these. You have the athletes, you have the kids that work in robotics, you have the kids that, in some cases, they are looking just for community service hours for their juvenile court system. I mean, we have such a wide range of students that show up to that, and they work so well together. I think just because they have this common interest, and a lot of times in school you don't find that common interest, and so that's why I like those types of events, to bring them all together. Some of the other things that we've done, we put in at our walking trail here in Sandusky, we put in 20 pieces of exercise equipment around that mile path. And that was fully student-led. They did all of the fundraising for that. Ended up being over $30,000 worth of fundraising efforts in a year, and placed that equipment on the Diamond Trail. And again, different types of students coming together in such a profound way to have an impact in the community. And now looking back, a lot of these kids have graduated, but this is something that they have placed in this community that they can be proud of, and they can bring their own children back to. And it's just like having an impact within the town that they grew up in. We work very closely with our VFW here. So at all of their fish fries, they have one once a month, and then during the Lenten season, they have one every Friday. But our students are in there dishwashing with the veterans, and just building connections with the community members. Just because we're in the school building doesn't mean that we can't network and have communication with the people outside of the school building. And I think that does help bridge a gap that a lot of communities face, especially when schools go for bond issues. And, what people in the community don't see the impact that the school has, then it's harder for them to vote for those bond issues. And we don't have that issue here because our kids are in the community and they're making a difference. We will be building a park this summer, actually. It was supposed to be built last summer. We have all of the equipment, but it had to get put off because of COVID. And our students will be building the park. So it's just great opportunities for us to get involved. And they see us outside of the classroom, so that kind of humanizes us as well and lets us know that we're all doing something together.
Can you think of any examples off the top of your head of or just, I guess, a story of a particular student or group of students, that you really saw benefited from this, who just really thrived?
Yeah, actually, it was 2017. One of the projects the kids set out to do was to bring the Vietnam Memorial, the moving wall, to Sandusky. And that was a huge task, but I'll say this one student, she was incredibly shy as a sophomore when I had her first, and really didn't put herself out there very much, and just kind of was okay sitting in the back and watching. Throughout this project, and then as the Flags of Remembrance project grew, she started to take a very active role, still on the side, but one-on-one conversations with people. And I think it completely transformed the way she sees things. She actually finishes up her teaching degree this year. She decided to go into teaching because of the impact that each of these service events has had for her. And she wants to do the same thing for others. But she grew and just took on a completely different role as she went from her sophomore year to her senior year. The confidence that she had after that was just incredible. I would have guessed that the things that she would be doing today. But I think it's because of the experiences that she had doing the community service outside of the school to give her that confidence to have discussions with people and to network with other people outside of the school building.
Would you like to see a future where that's more embedded in the curriculum itself, the K-12 curriculum, in school, that community service work is that something that you have a passion or an interest in seeing happen?
I would love that. I know some schools do require seniors to do some type of senior project, or they have to have so many hours of community service. There are schools that do require that. I feel like sometimes when you put a requirement on things like that, though, kids try to jump through too many holes to say they did something, and they lose sight of the good endorphins that they get from actually doing it. I think what we have going on here is working incredibly well. I have never had an event where we didn't have someone show up to work it, and like I said, it's over 100 hours a semester of different types of volunteer work. Sometimes I have to shut it down because we have too many kids show up. So I think sometimes when you do put the requirement on it, it takes away that feel-good thing. That's really what I found from doing these is the kids aren't showing up for me, per se. They're showing up for themselves, and once you get them to one event, they're coming back all the time. And so that's what's powerful for me is it's not a requirement, and it's they're doing it for them because they can see that impact.
I'm Nikki Herda, and you're listening to Bright, a podcast that's made possible by Michigan Virtual, a nonprofit organization that's leading and collaborating to build learning environments for tomorrow. Today, I'm chatting with Erin Carlson, an English teacher at Sandusky Jr and Senior High School. Up next, we chat about how Erin's philosophy for going beyond requirements in learning comes into play in her English classroom. So I explored your blog a bit, and I was struck by one of your recent articles in which you described performing a little bit of an experiment in your classroom where you spent a few minutes of each class period reading aloud to students. You wrote in this vlog, if you allow me to quote you for a moment, that giving up 5 to 10 minutes of my class for a couple months was the most beneficial thing I could have done for those kids. They not only learned an important event in history, but also learned how powerful a book can be if they allow themselves to bring it to life. And, you can get more into the story of it, but I was wondering if you could just tell me a little bit about what this experience was like for you as a teacher and what it taught you.
I think back, again, I always reflect a lot on the things that I remember from school. And I think from our elementary days, we can probably all go back and think of the books that were read to us out loud by our teachers. And we remember those books for forever because of that experience. And so the particular blog post that you were reading, that was when I had some 9th and 10th grade students. And they were a more challenging class that they didn't like to read on their own, and they needed to find some books, and they needed to bring back that love of reading. And so I said, how can I bring back this love of reading to these kids? How can I show them that books are engaging, and how can I show them how to read? Because I think sometimes what happens in junior high age children is sometimes they read books because they have to read so many books for a grade, and they just read monotone to themselves, and they forget to put that emotion back into the words. So I feel as a high school teacher, I think a read aloud in the high school is just as important as a read aloud in the elementary, to bring back that love of reading and to show the kids how to read with emotion and bring back that story so that, yes, books are engaging, they are fun, but I need to show you how to read them again. And so I found that the kids love nonfiction as long as it's told in a story form, because they want to feel connected within the story. But they always ask, is this true? And as soon as you tell them it's true, they're so much more engaged. So a couple of the books that I've done as a read aloud, and I still do them today all the time. I do a read aloud every day. But some of the most powerful ones have been Typhoid Mary. That was the one that the blog post was inspired by, The Deadliest Cook in America, which is I read this before COVID-19 to a group of students, and then I read it again this year to my 7th graders. And to tie in the COVID-19 component to Typhoid Mary's story was very interesting and led to some incredible discussions. So telling these stories through the read aloud just provided so many other opportunities for discussion that I would have never had with these kids. And what's important to note too, these read alouds, they had zero assignment tied to them. So they were just listening to listen. and to be engaged. And I think that took away some of the pressure that kids sometimes feel when you're reading a book together and there's going to be a test or a quiz or you have to write something about it. This just took that away, and I had so many students that would have normally just shut down completely when we started a new book, just led some of the most powerful discussions because that pressure was gone. Another book that we read was called Never Fall Down. It's about the Khmer Rouge and the stories that came out from that in the 1970s. And these are events in history that a lot of the kids had never even heard about. And personally, I hadn't either. We never had gotten to that within our social studies curriculum a lot of the time. So, knowing that something almost worse than the Holocaust happened after the Holocaust, and reading and listening to those stories, just the opportunities for discussion and engagement were just beyond anything I could have ever imagined. And so I try to do a lot of different types of genres, but nonfiction is definitely the most powerful with the kids. We just read the book Normal, which was inspired. It's the same author as Wonder. A lot of people have heard of the Wonder story, but this was a true story. Normal is the actual true story of the child that really inspired her to write Wonder. So, but I could go on and on with the different types of books that I do as a read aloud, but it's just so powerful and only takes 5 to 10 minutes a day. And in most cases, the kids are just asking me to continue. Like, please just keep reading. We can't stop there. And so that helps to bring back that love of reading that I do find that a lot of junior high kids lose. After I started doing that, I did create my own online class that is actually offered in Sandusky. It's called Great Books. So a lot of kids had found, and they had come to me and said, I just wish I had more time to read. After taking my class, I wish I could read more of these books. And so I created that class, and it's just a day or an hour within their day where they can read and reflect, and we can have discussion about it online. And so I had 36 students take that last year. So that's definitely a class that's growing, and I get tons of feedback from those kids as they just need the time.
I can almost see a connection between what you were saying about when you were talking about community service. You said, if you make it a requirement, right, that takes away half of the joy of it. And it sounds in a way like that's kind of also what you're doing with this read aloud, because you're not making it an assignment. You're just making it something like for the love of it, in this intrinsic value. And I guess that's the connection I'm seeing between the two activities. And I'm just curious what you think about that, I guess.
I think that is exactly what it is. And kids feel so much pressure today. I think when you can just give them something that they can enjoy and just grab on and do for them instead of for a grade or some type of assignment, I think that's refreshing to them. I know at the end of every year, I do a personal growth literature circle with my juniors, and that kind of takes it outside of the normal curriculum that you would expect in an English classroom. But I found that the kids, instead of reading a classic at the end of the year, or, that most kids would expect to do in an 11th grade English class, I ask them, what types of books are you going to pick up as an adult? Are you going to pick up a classic, or are you going to pick up something that is maybe that will help you within your career or your family life, or something that will help you grow as an individual? So I have about 20 to 25 different types of personal growth books that I have 3 to 4 copies of each one. And I let the kids pick out which personal growth book they want to read and put them into literature circles. And that is a type of book that they've never read before. And I get such great feedback after we're done with that, because they find value in it, and it just gives them a purpose. Oh, well, this is something I can use later in life. They can find that connection. Trying to think outside the box to give them those opportunities to find ways that reading can enhance their lives. I think that's my job as an English teacher, and those are the ways that I can bring that to them, I guess. I will say one other thing that we've done in the English class for project-based learning that's been pretty powerful, that's had an impact on our school in general. It was probably 3 years ago. I had a group of juniors. It was a very small class, and they wanted to do something different. They're like, let's do something where we can have an impact. And I said, all right, well, let's write down some ideas. Let's see what we can come up with. And so we together created what we call the giving closet here at the school. So my back closet in my classroom is full of food products, personal hygiene, like the shampoo, deodorant, laundry detergent, face wash, towels, blankets, clothing, everything that any student would ever need, not just in the school, but mostly at home. And so they came up with a system. They did all of the marketing for it, did the press releases, recorded some videos, and put it out to the school. And it still exists today. And we have many students that utilize that on a regular basis because of that project-based learning activity. None of our students have to worry about anything. I mean, I have students that will come to me, or most of the time it's through email, because again, taking away that pressure from the kids, there's so much, it's hard for them to come and ask for help. So they know it's there. I email regularly and say, remember, we have these things. If you need them, email me and let me know. And a lot of times I actually just drop it in their locker on my conference hour. So there's no interaction whatsoever. It's just there for them. But we've had that, like I said, I think it's 4 years now, where kids will email me and say, my shoes are falling apart. Can I please get some new shoes? So I can run up to Walmart on my conference hour and get new shoes and have them for them by the end of the day. So those are some activities that can really have a big impact, not on the kids. I mean, that has such a big impact on me, and being able to do that for the kids. I mean, that's what this is all about. I mean, these are things that I can't do just with the regular curriculum. So it's all about just making it more. But that's what makes this job fun.
Yeah. I wonder, would you tell me a little bit more about kind of what project-based learning looks like in an English classroom? Because I've talked to a few people about project-based learning on the podcast, but I'm not sure that I've actually talked to an English teacher. So how does that connect with the English curriculum?
So again, with the English curriculum, it's really easy to make anything work because we have the speaking, the listening, the writing, all of those skills kind of put together. So for them, I made it a lot about the writing, but then the speaking and listening as well. A group of kids were our PR team, so they had to come up with the press releases and type up all of the posters and things that we would hang around the school to let the kids know that it existed. And another team that worked on the recording, that would be the speaking and listening standards that the kids could kind of tie into that. But the biggest ones are any type of writing activity that gets them outside of writing the typical 5-paragraph essay or whatever that might be. We did do some research as well in types of things that the students would need here. We also had to do some fundraising efforts. So the kids had to write letters to different sponsors, things like that. But again, every single type of project can involve some type of writing and speaking. So I think really the English classroom is a great classroom to incorporate project-based learning.
The other question I wanted to ask you is, I won't ask you what your favorite book is, because that's, unless you have one, in which case you can tell me. But but maybe just like 3 books that you've really resonated with that you'd recommend. Okay.
So, this is tough. I'll start with this because this has been pretty profound for me. When I read a lot of books, and I try to read a lot of young adult books because I like to make recommendations to the kids. So in the back of my classroom, it's all of the books I've read this year. I take pictures of them and hang them up, which is another great talking point with the kids. They can see as I add new books up there, and they're like, oh, what was that about? Or what was this about? I challenged myself this year to pick up a graphic novel and read it, because I don't know what it was about it. I just had these, I guess, preconceived notions about what a graphic novel was, and I had never read one before. And that, if I have to pick a genre that I'm going to go to the library to look for right now, it's a graphic novel, specifically memoirs or nonfiction stories within the graphic novel realm. I have learned so much about history and different ethnicities and races that I had never experienced before in my life. And a graphic novel, I can read that in a couple of hours and take so much from it and then start a different one. So I found this incredible love for them because of how much I can learn in a very short amount of time. So This Is My America was a young adult book that I read this year that I would say had the biggest impact on me. I wouldn't call it my favorite book, but I like to think of books as what taught me the most and gave me the best perspective. That book, along with Dear Justice. I feel like living in a rural community, I am sheltered, and I know our students are sheltered here. And reading books like those two in particular, just opened my eyes to so much that I've never experienced or really been truly able to understand. And that's kind of the message that I try to give my kids. You are going out into a very big world that you probably are not prepared for, living in a small rural community. And so this is an opportunity for you to read these different types of novels where the character does not look like you. And so that you can build that empathy and understanding and know what other people are going through in this world. And last year, I teamed up with a teacher in Flint, Michigan. She's a colleague that I had worked with before. And we started a book club with any students could join from our school and her school. And we met on Zoom a couple of times and talked about a book in particular that we had picked. And just listening to different perspectives from her students and my students, I think it was just incredibly powerful. So using books to bridge the gap between the kids and the experiences that they have, I would say that's what's been most powerful and meaningful for me in the types of books that I choose to read.
I'm Nikki Herda, and you're listening to Bright, a podcast that's made possible by Michigan Virtual, a nonprofit organization that's leading and collaborating to build learning environments for tomorrow. Today, I'm chatting with Erin Carlson, an English teacher at Sandusky Jr and Senior High School. Up next, I ask Erin about her favorite teacher from when she was a student, her vision for what's most important in learning, and what advice she has to share with her fellow educators right now. Tell me about your favorite teacher and why they were your favorite.
I would say my favorite teacher, I don't know if I have one. I think I have a few. Just because of the different experiences I've had. I have, like a favorite elementary teacher and a favorite high school teacher, just because the experiences were so different. But it all comes back to who did the extra things with me. And those are the things that I remember. This one particular teacher in elementary, we did plays all the time. We were able to put on productions in our classroom that was something that was just different, that not the other classrooms were not doing. And I would say in high school, really similar ideas. Those high school teachers that I have three in particular that really stand out to me, all in different subject areas too. So I think of a science teacher, an English teacher, and a social studies teacher that really stand out to me. They made things, I wouldn't say fun, but it was more They were personable with me, and you could tell that they cared. They had the empathy for all students, and it was providing different experiences that you wouldn't think of doing in a typical classroom. For instance, the science classroom, where we were always building things. We were doing different types of projects that took us outside of the textbook. My social studies teacher took me and a group of our students to meet John McCain when he came to Michigan. I mean, just things like that. My English teacher, she was also our drama teacher. So being in the plays and productions, it's just the extra things and the extra things that they did to make class memorable, and really just to show that they cared.
What is your vision for student learning? I know this is a big question, but if it were up to you, what would you want to see for every student? What is at the heart of that?
I would say it's more flexibility and providing different opportunities for every type of learner. I feel like sometimes in education I feel like it's boxed in, and we have so many check boxes to complete. And I don't know that it truly provides the best opportunities for every single kid. So I think that flexibility within learning and providing those different opportunities for every kid would be huge. And we saw some of that this year with the virtual learning. At the end of the year, I had 51 students virtual and about 150 in person. And so you can tell which kids were thriving in that virtual environment. They were learning, and they were doing incredibly well. And I would love to continue to offer those opportunities for those kids, providing those different experience for different kids. We all learn differently. And so I think public education, part of our goal should be to meet those different learners in different ways.
What words of advice or encouragement would you offer to educators right now? You know, this has been a pretty unique and challenging year for many.
I would say don't be afraid to try new things. Try to think outside of the box. The kids that we are teaching today are very different than the kids that we taught 15 years ago. And just to continue learning and growing with them. We're all human. We all make mistakes, and we all have to learn as we grow. So don't try to be perfect in any way, shape, or form, especially within this profession. And, admit when we're wrong and admit that we're learning with them, especially as I think we found that happened a lot with technology and during COVID, that the kids know more about technology than the adults. So we have to, work with them. I don't think this is a profession where we can say that we are always the experts and you must always learn from us. This is a mutual experience, and to continue to learn and grow with our students as we face whatever challenge comes our way next. So can't be afraid of these challenges. We have to make the most of everything.
After my conversation with Erin, I couldn't help but marvel at just how many of our teachers regularly go above and beyond for students and do all those extra little things to make learning memorable and meaningful. There are many good reasons we have requirements in place in our schools and classrooms, but Erin reminds us that some students get overwhelmed and disconnected the second a grade is attached to something. Sometimes the key might be to take the pressure off and remind them what learning can do for their own lives and for the lives of others. Without a doubt, it's challenging to balance the need for requirements in learning with opportunities to cultivate intrinsic motivation. But with leaders like Erin forging our path forward, if there's one thing we're certain of, it's that the future is bright. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Bright, Stories of Hope and Innovation in Michigan Classrooms. This podcast is produced by Herbie Gaylord, is hosted by me, Nikki Herda, and is shaped by many of our passionate and talented colleagues. Big thanks to Krista Green, Ann Perez, Ann Kraft, and Brandon Batista for their contributions to this episode. The Right podcast is made possible by Michigan Virtual, a nonprofit organization that's leading and collaborating to build learning environments for tomorrow. Education is changing faster than ever. Discover new models and resources to move learning forward at your school at michiganvirtual.org.